So, as I mentioned, we're going to get into now. You hear the big thing there, which is part of the conversation. It comes in towards the end of the conversation, not to spoil anything. Pardon me. A distinct lack of hope. A distinct lack of hope of anything to do with the Welsh government in particular, of taking on these changes that Lisa wanted to see, for example, with her 10-point plan. You can go and find out what all that is when the interview comes out. Having no faith in the political system. And that's what a lot of people, our American friends, are feeling at the moment, with a recent press conference that was attended by Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Pam Bondi et al., where the question about Epstein came up. And Trump exhibited a very weird reaction. Given that in some instances, he made Epstein, the issue around Epstein, a key part of his campaign. Pardon me. As you know, they said that they are the most transparent administration in history. Literally on the files that were given to those conservative influencers like DC Drano, Libs of TikTok, I believe Liz Wheeler and Jack Posobiec and all those guys, who, being charitable to a lot of them, I think they were taken in by a lot of this. It was turned into a photo op in some instances by opportune timing, given that Keir Starmer was making his appearance at the White House as well, so obviously there's going to be a lot of press outside. But on the binders that they were given, which ironically were less transparent than what is already available in the public sphere. So these binders that they were given says Epstein Files Phase 1, I believe they were called. Literally says on the bottom of them, just below Kash Patel and Pam Bondi's names, the most transparent administration in history. Now, Kash Patel in particular said that on day one we were going to have the Epstein Files. We were going to have the names of people that done these awful things to kids on Little St. James. And as you know, it's distinctly not day one anymore. And still nothing's been done. And in some instances, the really worrying thing that himself and Dan Bongino have seemingly committed to the establishment narrative now that they were so critical of for so long. It makes you wonder why. Something happened. They decided to change tack. Now that they got their position. Have they got the gun to the back of their head? Who knows, right? Who knows? But this issue is not going away. This issue is not going away. Funny thing happened recently at a I don't think it was a Turning Point event, but it was an event that was attended by Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk. There's about 7,000 people there. It might have been the recent TPUSA event. I'm not 100% sure. Charlie actually asked the crowd. In fact, I'm going to see, before I show you this, I'm going to see if I can find the interview. Sorry, not the interview, the clip. I believe I've got it by here. Yeah, so this is from the War Room, Steve Bannon's War Room. And actually is this the right clip? I'm not actually sure if this is the... Let me see if I can find the right clip a minute. Let me see if I can find the right clip. Because they were speaking to a room of about 7,000 people, I believe it was. So they were speaking to a crowd of about 7,000 people. And they asked this crowd if the Epstein issue was a big issue to them. And I just want to see if this is the right clip. I don't think this is either. I can't find the clip. Oh well, never mind. Charlie Kirk, I believe it is, asks the crowd of 7,000 people. So I'm going to stop, rambling now, because I realize that, there's only so much listening capacity and watching capacity that people have just to hear me look at my screen and say absolutely nothing. As this crowd of 7,000, is the Epstein issue important to you? And then you literally hear one of them say, whichever one it is, everybody's hand has just gone up. So you're talking 7,000 people. And it shows now a disconnect seemingly between the president and people that elected him, because he seems to be very laid back and even slightly antagonistic towards this issue now that it's him in the seat of responsibility for deciding what happens with this issue going forward now. Whether he does the same thing as the previous administrations that have covered for Jeffrey Epstein and his activities, whether it's because he was blackmailing important individuals and he was linked to intelligence. There's allegations that he was linked to the Mossad in Israel. There's allegations that he's linked to the FBI and the CIA. I've even seen some people allege that he's linked to MI6. So he's going to protect these powerful people, very powerful people, that have done heinous, disgusting things to children on this island as part of this massive sex trafficking operation to no one? Or is he actually going to break it and give the people what they want and let us know who was doing it? In a recent press conference, he was very antagonistic about it, which left a lot of his base with a very, very bad taste in their mouth. Here's what he had to say when a reporter asked about the Jeffrey Epstein situation.
Yeah, sure.
Could I just interrupt?
Sure.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure.
I think people will argue it's more of a desecration to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein that Trump has taken this very antagonistic and combative approach when people are asking very, very good questions about what's going to be happening with these files. But all of the lies that we've seemingly been told, not only the decades of lies that we've been told, but even just the lies by people in his administration about this issue. And the people, either it's because of Parambonde or it's because of whatever other system is going on behind the scenes, have been made to look very, very untrustworthy and have made him look very untrustworthy. But with these remarks, he can blame nobody but himself. And I say this as a person that was very excited when Trump got in and certainly agrees that he was better than the alternative. He was much better than the alternative. And as far as the other things have gone, for the most part, he's done very well. I think he's done quite well for the most part on the foreign policy front. I think his domestic agenda seems to be working. Obviously caused a slight panic initially with all the tariff agreements and stuff like that. But the things that he seems to be looking for that are going to benefit America, and I had this conversation the whole time, I'd be like, well, Donald Trump is not the leader of the UK. So what does it matter if whatever he does affects the UK in a negative capacity? He's not the leader of the UK. So the UK is not necessarily his concern, right? And for the most part, it seems that the rest of it is going pretty well. It's going pretty well. America, for the most part, certainly has a swagger and its confidence back. And a strong America, a strong West is good for the world. Make no mistake about it. A strong Western entity. Obviously, you have America, but then you also have, well, as soon as we take the country back, you'll have Britain and you'll have the other European countries as well. You have Hungary and Poland, for example, that are very, very strong in keeping their people secure, their country secure, and their faith secure. So for all of the stuff around this, I think the rest of it has gone particularly well, and it's certainly better than the alternative. Because with Kamala, for example, you wouldn't have got anything on Epstein. Definitely not. You would never have got anything on Epstein. You wouldn't have had any talk of peace at all in Ukraine. They would have kept it going. They would have kept funding Ukraine to the detriment of the American people. The war in the Middle East, forget about it. The war in the Middle East, absolutely forget about it. So Trump is certainly the better option that we had for America, certainly a better option America had, and certainly the better option that the world had. It tells you a lot when Putin recently got up on stage or at an event which he was at, or an event that he was at in Russia, some kind of big sort of press conference, and said that, I got to go now. He just got up out the chair. I got to go now. I don't want to keep President Trump waiting. And he had a phone call with President Trump or whatever, and he literally just left the stage being like, I don't want to keep him waiting, So again, people, even world leaders that they said Trump was in bed with and all this seem to be falling in line and at the very least respecting him, and you've got to be able to command respect if you want to get anywhere. But this shows a distinct lack of respect for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Absolutely. That people, yes, they are going to talk about it. They are going to talk about it because this is an issue that strikes right at the heart of everybody. Everybody has a son. Everybody has a daughter. Oh, well, not everybody has a daughter, but, you know, this is an issue that gets to the heart. It's, again, child innocence. It's the most vulnerable in some ways, other than babies, obviously, but children being taken advantage of by these disgusting, evil people in the most privileged positions in the world for their own disgusting satanic ends, and it being covered up for decades. Victims have been silenced. Victims been silenced by the legal system, but now in many instances it's likely they've been silenced physically as well. So I'll never believe that Virginia killed herself. I'll never ever believe that, just like I never believe Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. But anyway, that every single person that said they're going to come in and solve the issue hasn't done it. And with every single time somebody's come in claiming to solve the issue, the resentment has only built. Optimism has built, and then resentment has built. And you're looking at about 20 years or more of resentment that has built now. So forgive people for being angry and wanting answers to this, Mr. President. You know, yeah, people are going to keep talking about it. This is arguably the most important issue that you have to face, that you have to deal with right now in many respects for your own credibility with your own voters and with your own people. Okay? Some people are suggesting that this is very much low on the priority list for Americans and for the world. It is not. It is not. Make no mistake about it. Child welfare and children being taken advantage of sexually by the most powerful people in the world and getting away with it, not spending a single day in prison or at the end of a fucking rope, is definitely an issue that strikes at the heart of many people, especially fathers and mothers, which many people are, most people are. So yeah, not a good look for President Trump. Massively unforced error. Literally, despite everything that's going on now, the tragedy that's happened in Texas, mind you, which some people aren't happy with, because even though in the deal that he negotiated with Ukraine, I believe that part of that deal was sending weapons to Ukraine in exchange for the minerals and stuff like that. People are angry at Trump at the moment, I think rather unfairly, because he's now sending weapons to Ukraine when Texas is still dealing with the problems that it has with the flood recently, which sadly claimed the lives, I think, of about 24 people, 25 people. If you've watched the video of how that river spread, by the way, how that river burst very quickly and spread, how far it spread as well, it was terrifying. It was terrifying how quick that happened. And God rest their souls. God rest. Especially, I know some of the victims were just, you know, young girls and stuff like that. Truly, truly awful. And it was very, very... I saw an image on X, and I believe it was a picture of the mother of one of them. I believe she was interviewed having just lost her child, I believe it was. Might have been more than one child. I can't remember off the top of my head if she had more than one child and that the child was lost. But either way, she just lost a child in the flood, I believe. And she come back and circled around it. A lot of people would use this to discredit God, discredit Jesus, discredit Christianity, for example. Why would we let it happen? They'd be like, no, faith in Christ doesn't mean that you're not ever going to have tragedy or anything like that. Just means you don't have to walk through it alone. Just means you don't have to go through it alone. You know, you go back to Psalm 23, for example, the Lord is my shepherd. You know, and that's where the line comes from. It's actually Psalm 23 where that line comes from, as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. So, you know, saying that it's not that tragedy's never going to happen. So the evil's never going to happen. It's by faith in Christ, you don't have to walk through it alone. You don't have to deal with it alone. Someone's always got your back. The most powerful person, most powerful being in the universe has your back. How nice is that feeling, huh? So yeah, despite all that, you can still make the point of saying, oh yeah, we are dealing with it. You don't need to be so aggressive and antagonistic about this stuff. And it's one of the victims, one of the, again, people set up profiles and all of these things. Got to be careful what you see on social media. But allegedly, this is one of the profiles that is run by one of the victims, is calling Trump out, you know, very, very vehemently, and rightfully so. And rightfully so. Especially when this is an issue, as I said, that Trump campaigned on. at least for some part of it, right? Campaigned on tariffs, campaigned on his economic policy, his foreign policy, all of this stuff, right? Absolutely. Campaigned on ending the wars all across the world and not starting any new ones, right? Campaigned on being a peacemaker. But yet, is it going to come at the expense, seemingly, of the 1,000? Call him a creep, right? This is not just a creep. This is the most prolific pedophile in history. We're talking his victims, allegedly, in some instances, I've heard reports of numbering at about 1,000. We're not just talking one or two instances here. We're not just talking of it being an instance where a migrant in a park, for example, is eyeing up your kid, right? And being a bit creepy around your kid, right? We're not talking that. We're talking orders of magnitude above that. By the most powerful people, many of whom are likely in your contact list, Mr. President. That, at least in the court of public opinion, are already guilty, but it just matters that we get the confirmation of it now. But a letter came out recently saying there's not even any list. There's not even any list. So here's Pam Bondi, though, responding to that question, saying about what happened when she was interviewed by Fox, and we'll go over that clip as well. And then a damning document, which really, really throws her into disrepute here. But here's what Pam Bondi had to say off the back of Trump's, in my opinion, flagrant disrespect of Jeffrey Epstein's victims.
In February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of videos.
Before she says that, why then would you use a singular term to describe that? If you're describing multiple things, so you're describing the Epstein client list or the file, you're describing the Epstein file, you're describing MLK, you're describing JFK, moon landing, all of these things in one singular thing, surely you would use the term they. And then the interviewer would likely ask you the question, what do you mean by they? And it'd be like, oh, well, I have all of these other things to go off of. But the interview that she's referring to, the Fox News interview, clearly asked about the client list in particular. And she said, it's waiting on my desk for my review. We'll give you that clip in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. But this next part, in my opinion, is just pure deflection. Because this next part is not something anybody ever asked for. And I can't help but think it's to get away from the true point of where people never wanted to know or see the things that went on Little St. James. They want to know who did it. But here's where Pam Bondi's focus goes in her next statement.
They turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was
the video, she's talking there, which I'll give you the video later on in this episode. At the moment, ladies and gentlemen, of the minute that is missing from the supposed footage outside Jeffrey Epstein's cell, or at least the entrance to his cell block, there's a minute of the footage that is missing. That video is edited. That video is edited. They did not wipe the metadata for that video, and it's extremely likely that that video was edited using Adobe Premiere Pro. I'll give you that in a little bit. So this is not looking good. This is not looking good for Pam Bondi at all. So she said, let's go through it. She said that she was referring to multiple things using a singular term when she was asked specifically about the Epstein client list, not even about the file, not about MLK, not about JFK, all of these things. She was asked specifically about the client list. She said, it's waiting on my desk for my review. Then she goes on about saying all of these things are child porn. It was never going to be released anyway. Yeah, nobody ever asked for that. Nobody ever asked for that. But if you have people verifying that these things were child porn, child rape material, again, I don't like the term child porn, it's child rape material, right? Because, you know, a child cannot consent to pornography in any manner, okay? A child cannot consent to this shit. So it's child rape, right? And it's child rape material, right? And if you have, as Pam Bondi has said in undercover recordings, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that, there's thousands of these videos of them doing awful things to children, people never wanted to see that. People never asked to see the horrendous footage of what was going on and the images and stuff of what was going on Little St. James. People want to know who did it. They want the names. They want the identities. They want, basically, to have corroborated what they already know, what we already know. Because we know in large part who was flying the Lolita Express, right, in many instances. Know the names that were on there. We know the names of for example, as an example, the Israeli Prime Minister that met with Jeffrey Epstein about 36 times. But Prince Andrew that recently had the investigation into him dropped, right? Kind of fitting, really, after Kash Patel and Dan Bongino came out recently and said that, again, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. So, again, they traffic people to no one. She said about, Ghislaine Maxwell in one of her interviews, saying that she's right where she should be, but she's committed no crime. If this is true, she hasn't trafficked anybody because she trafficked people to whom? Who did she traffic people to? She trafficked people to no one. So, again, this is now being made up, basically, to somehow be a victimless crime. And, very different to what Pam Bondi was saying a little while ago. So Pam Bondi, this is the clip from Fox News that she's referencing here. She was asked specifically, I don't know the host's name, but she was asked specifically about the Epstein client list in this clip. And she says, it's on my desk waiting to review. And then goes on and says about the file, the MLK, JFK, all of this stuff, right? But she's asked specifically about the Epstein file and says, it's on my desk.
DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So,
one more time, ladies and gentlemen, one more time.
DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President.
Directive from President Trump. It's sitting on my desk waiting to review. It is sitting on my desk. And then goes on to say, well, I'm reviewing all of this other stuff, basically saying, without saying any words, but bear with me, right? Okay, a lot of us were giving her the benefit of the doubt up to this point. But a document recently came out as well, ladies and gentlemen, from the U.S. Department of Justice, the DOJ, and the FBI. I'm going to read it to you now, and I'm going to show you the last part, because the last part is very telling indeed, that at some point in this administration, the supposed most transparent administration in history, someone has lied. Either they were lying before, or they're lying now. Because this is a letter that is not saying who it's addressed from. I can only assume that it is regarding, sorry, I'm just making sure my webcam's in focus at the moment. I can only assume that it is from this year, the Trump administration. So, I'm going to read from the second paragraph. Well, actually, it says here, to ensure that the review was thorough, the FBI conducted digital searches of its database, hard drives, and network drives, as well as physical searches of squad areas, locked cabinets, desks, closets, and other areas where responsive, I think it says responsive material, let me have a look. Yeah, where responsive material may have been stored. These searches uncovered a significant amount of material, including more than 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence. So, this is where Pam Bondi, again, in that press conference, tried to make it so that people were asking to see all this stuff. We didn't want to see the horrific material. We wanted the names. So files relating to Jeffrey Epstein include a large volume of images of Epstein, images and videos of victims who are either minors or appear to be minors, and over 10,000 downloaded videos and images of illegal child sex abuse material and other pornography. Teams of agents, analysts, attorneys, and privacy and civil liberties experts combed through the digital and documentary evidence with the aim of providing as much information as possible to the public whilst simultaneously protecting victims. That's an interesting one, because the files that were released, I think I said this before in this episode, or it was either in the last recording that I scuppered, that the files that Pam Bondi released, the influencers had, were more redacted than stuff that was already out there in the public domain. So that was quite interesting. They're being so transparent that they're trying to redact things that we already know. You know, it was quite interesting. There was a list of phone numbers and names that was already available in the public domain. You can go and find it on, you know, many journalistic outlets, and even if you just do a basic Google search, right, you can find this page was then redacted in the edition, the phase 1, quote-unquote, edition that was given to the influencers. So that was very, very interesting, that they're so transparent that they're trying to redact things that we already know. Very, very interesting. Much of the material is subject to court-ordered sealing. Only a fraction of this material would have been aired publicly had Epstein gone to trial, as the seal served only to protect victims and did not expose any additional third parties to allegations of illegal wrongdoing. Through this review, we found no basis to revisit the disclosure of these materials and will not permit the release of child pornography. I'm perfectly fine with not releasing child pornography. I'd be very weirded out if you did, as with many others. However, the key point to this document is, ladies and gentlemen, the last paragraph. The last paragraph, which would be on screen for you now, ladies and gentlemen. The systematic review revealed no incriminating client list, quote unquote. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So what was on Pam Bondi's desk then? When she's asked about the Epstein client list, and she says, it's on my desk waiting to review, what was on her desk? So it's quite clear, ladies and gentlemen, either they lied before, or they're lying now. Because either they never had any intention of releasing this stuff and they just campaigned on it, which is very likely true, and that's what's happening now anyway. And all of the stuff they were saying before about this being a cover-up and all of that stuff that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel was saying to advance their political agendas was never true. Or again, they're lying now to cover for these people, whether it's because they have a gun to the back of their head or something like that. So, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. And very, very depressing. Very, very depressing, because people like me actually got our hopes up and thought we were actually going to get answers. Thought we were actually going to get answers. How naive we were. How naive we were to think that things would be different.